Welcome to Familiar Territory, an anime podcast hosted by two white dudes who've been friends for over 15 years. Here we talk about the history and influence of anime, as well as review anime new and old. So grab your talking cap and transform into some comfy clothes as we step into a familiar territory. My name is Grant.
And I'm Brantley. Heads up, spoilers on the way. Check the description, see if you're safe to listen. Hello, dear listener. Do you enjoy spectating conversations between people you don't know with little to no action happening at the same time? How about if those people were, creatures? And if the topic of discussion was murder? If so, have fun with your true crime podcast. We're going to be talking about anime. No, for real. We're talking about Inspector, Season 2.
Season 2. The one that everybody liked more. But me.
Inspector is a show about mysteries and dialogue and spirits and dialogue.
So much fucking dialogue.
And murder. There's murder. But
also dialogue.
Mostly dialogue. Yeah. So if you like people talking, then hey, this is your show. But this is season 2, as you might have seen on the episode card. So hey, if you have any interest in this, but you have no idea what the fuck Inspector is, then go check out our review on the first season. Go do that first. Order of operations. And for everybody else who's still here, let's talk about season 2. So Grant, do you want to give us sort of a synopsis of what season 2 is about in the grand scheme?
Season 2's nothing. That's the thing I don't like about it. So
would you say this is the Seinfeld of Inspector seasons so far?
I will say that it has plot, it's just very tangentially related. And a lot of people seem to like that. I like grand overarching mysteries that take a full 12 episodes to finish. And I know a lot of people were not a fan of that in the season 1. But I don't know. I thought it was nice to be able to kind of invest in the mystery and figure out some stuff as it goes along. And in season 2's case, it seemed like everything was just kind of some whack shit until Kotoko decided to be like, hey, you're all wrong and here's why. But it was still fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you mentioned, it's very structurally different from the first season, where first season's all about like building up in the long term to this major mystery, and being really, really thorough about it, right? Like, sort of diving into every little detail, and it's weaving back and forth in between, like, sort of truth and lie. And season 2, instead, is much more episodic. There's not clean, sort of, even distributions between the different mysteries either. Some of these episodes are one-offs, some of them will carry on for 3 or 4 episodes. So it's all over the place. But if you are really here for like the overarching mystery to build up, you will not get that in this season. I'm not even sure if like, let's say we get season 3. I don't know if like you would need this season to just jump to that and experience it. What do you think?
If they're gonna continue doing the manga, because the first season's based off of the book,
mm-hmm.
right? That then it got adapted into a manga, and then season 2 is based completely on the manga.
Okay.
And so I think if we do season 3, we'll continue to do the manga, which is still episodic,
mm-hmm.
but there is a little bit more Rika in season 3. So we get to see Kuro's cousin a little bit more. I know that like Kotoko and her do some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you would probably need it you would probably need the episode that focuses on Rika, and that's about
mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah. In this season, like, we have, I want to say there's 2 episodes that feature Rika in them. One of them, she's fairly prominent, and then another one, she's kind of slightly brought in near the end. So, like, when we say the overarching narrative is not here, we mean it. Like, it is sparse, right?
Yeah, well, the thing is that from what I've gathered, most people like this season a lot better.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like if you look at like this one has a 7.36 on my anime list, and I'm pretty sure that Inspector season 1 only has like a 6.9. So like that's a significant increase. Although Inspector season 1 had almost 200,000 people review it, and Inspector season 2 only had about 27,000.
Yeah, there's definitely the sort of the bias of who continues on watching, right? Like, so the people who stuck around and kept watching, they will bother to rate it. The score will go up. So yeah, that's definitely something to consider. But still, clearly there's people who do like this format. So, and I do think it has some advantages, as well. Before we get into the meat of things, what do you think about the new opening and ending?
I have dubbed it. The opening is Halloween Punk. It is the only song in that genre.
Invented it.
Yeah, it invented Halloween Punk. I really like the opening, but it sounds like a Halloween song.
Would the opening fit in a Spirit Halloween while you're doing whatever the hell people do in Spirit Halloween?
No, I don't think the song would fit in a Spirit Halloween. Because here's the thing. When you're in a Spirit Halloween, you don't hear Halloween music. You hear just like 80s pop, right? You might get a couple like Spooky Scary Skeletons or maybe Monster Mash. But can you imagine having to work at a fucking Spirit Halloween and hear the same 5 Halloween songs that have been written throughout the history of humanity?
I feel like that's kind of like Christmas shopping syndrome, just more concentrated.
But there's so many more Christmas songs.
It's true.
Like, yes, you're gonna hear Mariah Carey like 9 times a day, but at least you might get a couple of We Need a Little Christmas. You might get Silver Bells. You might get White Christmas. I can't even name 5 Halloween songs. Monster Mash. Spooky Scary Skeletons. That's all I can think of. And the opening to Inspector 2.
Yeah. Got it. So we're up to a running playlist of 3.
3.
Each running about, like 3 to 4 minutes, so... Yeah.
So it would be miserable.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like the opening. The ending's
Wait, so
really
you've
good.
been to a Spirit Halloween?
I've been to, maybe not a Spirit Halloween, but I've been to, what's the one, like, party store?
Party City?
Yeah, and you know how they have Halloween City?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to a Halloween City.
You got out alive?
Maybe. I could be a ghost.
You could be a yokai.
I could be a yokai.
Oh my god.
So yeah, the opening's really good. The ending was fine. I liked the animation of the opening, but it kind of like foreshadowed some events that never happened.
Yeah. Like
there's the part
go ahead.
Where Kuro like reaches out to grab Kotoko and she disappears, and then she like stands behind him all evilly. That was nothing. Nothing happened in the show for that to be like a particularly interesting thing to have in the opening.
Yeah, the closest thing we have is like episode, I think it was 11. It was the second to last episode of the season, where they have a flashback where Rika is like telling Kuro to not trust Kotoko, and
because she's powerful and scary,
and that's it. Like
that's it. Nothing.
Like, okay, if that's what the opening is alluding to, my god, then not a lot there.
Yeah, not a lot there. But I will say that one of the things I did enjoy about this season is that there were like a lot of episodes where Kotoko and Kuro just weren't in it. Like, essentially, the formula for the show was first episode, build up the mystery. The next 2 or 3 episodes are going to be Kotoko and Kuro trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I thought that was good. I thought that was fun. I wish there would have been an overarching plot that was happening with that, but the stories that were told in the short amount of time I thought were pretty good. So why don't we talk a little bit about the mysteries?
All right. So we'll start with
spooky mysteries.
Start with the first one, which is a one-off. In this one, we've got sort of a haunted apartment. There's a statue that's haunting this place, and this sumo yokai, I should say sumo-esque yokai, is basically...
He is a Street Fighter character.
It's E Honda. He's making a bunch of racket, right? Where he's at, he's not doing damage or anything, but still all the same, doing his thing, and that's causing trouble. And so, fortunately, you do get to see Kotoko and Kuro right away at the start of this season. Yeah. So, it's part recap episode. We have some characters talking about Kotoko and Kuro before they get involved. And so for people who are just jumping right in, then you're going to get the basic premise of, why these characters are important. How Kotoko sort of became the emissary / ambassador for, the spirits of the world with yokai and whatnot. How Kuro had ingested the flesh of a mermaid and another yokai that allows him to be functionally immortal, and also to grab the thread of history, the future that he wants to take as a path, as long as it's, within some realm of reasonability. And so you get to know about them, and then they go about basically resolving the mystery. They tell the people, in the apartments, oh, this is a misunderstanding. There is no beastie here or anything. It's just the landlord hiding a giant reptile pet that normally would not be allowed, right? But really, they're covering up for the fact that yes, there is an entity here, and then they remove it from the premises and to go take care of it. Generally, the mysteries in Spectre go one of two ways. Either there's an entity causing, trouble, and they need to, solve that trouble without letting the humans around know, so that it doesn't, sort of breach the stability between the world of humans and the world of yokai. Or it's sort of a mixed culture situation where we have a human and some kind of spirit entity that are living together or cooperating together, and they've come across some kind of problem and are seeking the counsel of someone who lives in both of those worlds to mediate. And so this episode falls into the former category, where it's sort of suppress the information and solve the problem. What did you think of the episode, Grant?
The first episode I liked. It was kind of a, it was a good way to do the recap without it being a recap episode.
Mm-hmm.
I like that Kotoko pulled off a bunch of bullshit to make people think that it wasn't a ghost.
Yeah.
She just gave off this list of shit that could be possible, and they're like, "Oh, that makes sense." And then she's in the car, and she's like, "Yeah, I lied through my fucking teeth. We got to go murder this ghost with a magic spell." And then they do
a magic spell called "I'm going to stab my cane into its neck, and Kuro's going to twist it to behead it."
It was good. It was fun.
Yeah, this is one of the rare cases where you actually get an action scene in the show as well. So. This episode in a way is a bit of a poor litmus test. You're going to get a lot of Kotoko and Kuro. You're also going to get some action, which isn't prominent in the series, and you're going to get everything condensed into one episode, which is, a rarity for this season.
Yes.
But then again, if you want like an attractive start to the show to get you hooked, then maybe this is exactly what you need. So yeah.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. And then we immediately go into classic Inspector in the next episode.
Mm-hmm. Yep, this is the Yuki Ona's dilemma.
Probably the best mystery of the entire show, if I'm being honest. Like, they started off strong, and it's a little upsetting that they never reached this again. But I loved the Yuki Onna story arc.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I really liked it. So why don't you walk us through what happened and what you enjoyed with it?
So in this, it starts off with this dude climbing up a mountain who gets almost assassinated by his best friend by being pushed off a mountain, mm-hmm. and he is saved by a Yuki Onna and lives. And so he goes back to his hometown with all the money he has from his company. And then he almost gets murdered by his wife. And so he just leaves society and goes back to the mountain town that he almost died in. And he meets up with the Yuki Onna. And then his wife, who tried to kill him, is found dead. And so he has to prove his innocence, but the only person who can really prove his innocence is a ghost. And so they're like, well, shit. What am I supposed to do? And then that's when Kotoko comes in, and she does her magic, and it turns out that his wife was killed by one of his subordinates that he worked for, who was like in love with him. But the real good thing about this episode is Muroi Masayuki, who is the man, and Yuki Ona's relationship. It's very cute, mm-hmm. because they both kind of are antisocial and kind of cold against one another, but it's basically two tsunderes trying to tsundere their way into being each other's husband and wife. And so and Kotoko's only like real thing she does in this one is she bullshits her way into making the guy talk about how much he actually loves the Yuki Onna, because she convinces the Yuki Onna that he was gaslighting her and he did kill his wife. And he's like, I would never do that. I'd never kill my wife. And the Yuki Onna's like, of course he wouldn't kill his wife. I know that because I love him and he loves me. And Kotoko's like, yeah, I knew that. I just wanted you guys to admit it to each other. Mm-hmm. And I love that shit. It was good. It was cute. It was a little manipulative, but I thought it was fun.
Yeah, that's kind of Kotoko's style. The ends are kind of what's most important, and she's okay with being deceptive or kind of cruel in her means, which in a way kind of, I think, reflects sort of the nature of like yokai and mythology in that, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like there's like a cultural touchstone within that.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot like those Japanese like yokai where it's like the smiling woman, where it's like if she asks you if she's beautiful, and you don't say yes or no, you just politely excuse yourself, mm-hmm. because it's not about it's about like truth, and it's about like, you know, it's like any other myths and urban legends. It's about a more like a moral lesson, right? Mm-hmm. And so the moral lesson is, hey, don't be with a ghost if you don't love her, and if you need to make sure you love her, I have to accuse you of being a murderer.
Yeah, I think that the side characters besides Kotoko and Kuro in the show can sometimes be sort of flat. But I would say Masayuki and the Yuki Onna are probably some of the more interesting characters in this bunch. Like you said, they're cute, they're charming, right? Like they have decent chemistry with each other, and just sort of the basic warming up that they do, is just kind of fun to play along with. like the fact that when they first meet, they both find each other kind of intimidating and scary to look at. So like essentially a lot of these like breaking those cultural boundaries, and finding where they sort of intersect. They have these preconceived notions of each other they're slowly disarming. There's other cute details that just kind of make for good conversation. So, for example, in their first encounter, Masayuki asks the Yuki Onna why she would ever need money. So she says humans are getting better at food, but she needs human money to go buy that food, Otherwise, like, if she would just go steal everything, then she might, run them out of business.
Right.
And so that's an interesting little icebreaker as to, like, they're already in each other's worlds, but they've been, sort of, there is, like, an invisibility to it, right? So I think that sort of, it has some real world implications, and it just, again, makes for good conversation. There are some other interesting things I want to sort of just mention offside here that might apply for later stuff we talk about as well. In these episodes, Kotoko describes how yokai perceive time differently. For example, it would be difficult for Yuki Onna to even properly give an alibi because she's not working on sort of a calendar basis of time. Instead, it's more about events happening and stuff, and that also is something that's culturally experienced in real life. I'm aware of like indigenous African tribes that operate in that understanding of time where there isn't sort of this linear constant measurement of time that's ticking by, and there's history that's sort of being filled into that. Instead, it's not about measuring time, more so time happens when things happen. If you want to know more about that, you can check out Organize Your Own Temporality by Rashida Phillips online. Just go search that. There's your there's Brantley's assigned homework for this episode. Apparently, I keep doing
I have an assigned homework, but I'm not going to talk about it till the very end.
Okay. But yeah,
I will say one of the other things that the Yuki Onna looks a lot like the dude's wife.
Yes.
Like it looks like Masayuki's dead wife, and so it is kind of cute that like he's always been like, ah, man, that ghost that saved me when I was just graduated college, man, she was a cutie.
Yeah. I also do like that Kotoko is keeping sort of the optics of being this like yokai ambassador by she's staging this meeting at the mouth of a cave, and it's all kind of scenic for that, but she's also just sitting there with her konbini food. Yes.
Yeah.
She's got her bottled tea and whatever, It's just very Kotoko,
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that Kotoko is just such a charming character is that she has like all of this elegance and all of this pride, but also is still like 21. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, yeah, I have to be there for that thing, but I need to grab a lunch on my way there. So
yeah.
Big fan of that.
Yeah, I think in this season she's turning 20.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyways,
but college kid doing college kid things with too much power. She's also so goddamn horny in this season.
Yeah, I was gonna mention it now if you didn't. So let's talk about that. How do you feel about that?
It's fine. I mean, it can come off a little uncomfortable, but I've heard people talk like her, mm-hmm. just very blatantly like talking about her sexual escapades, and part of me wonders if it is her trying to throw people off, because it could be, but also it's probably something that she thinks about and is true about. It's funny sometimes. Sometimes I feel like it can cut a little bit into the drama of it, but when it works, and I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of implementation here. Like, I think there's a lot of like like blunt sex jokes in media that just don't really land for me because they're trying to be funny, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Sort
But she's being cringe.
Exactly. It's so lame, right? Like there's it's not as if like the way she's bringing it up, like even if there is the intent to sort of knock people off guard a little bit by being vulgar, she's so matter of fact with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the joke isn't necessarily that like like, oh, she's horny, she's a pervert. It's more so that she's saying these things in places where they're taboo. You know, she'll be hanging out in front of someone's apartment, you know, before they head in, and she'll just drop a lewd comment, you know. It's not like she's saying it out in front of kids or anything, right?
Right.
But it's the fact that it is a taboo to talk about sex, and then she just has no like filter on that, or chooses not to filter it. I think is really, really funny. It wraps back around to being funny, right? Like, and there's, I mean, it's absurd too. There's one part where she talks about like, oh, like the bathtub is big enough that both Kuro and I can fit in it, and he can wash his hands in my vagina, and it's like, excuse me.
It's just very, very blatant. Like, she's not.
And it's unsexy too. There's nothing titillating about the way she puts it. It's so I think it's funny. It's different from like Studio Trigger style of sex talk where it's, you know, it's trying to one up itself constantly. You like you know, oh, sex, violence, and mock speed. Here's a character who's literally a sex doll, you know, or you know, Kill Kill, panty and stocking, that kind of thing. Where like any kind of commentary for it is kind of lost in how much they're trying to horn dog it up. I don't get that same impression from this. It's a weird kind of like, pardon me for the phrasing on this, but it's kind of like a flaccid humor, or a dry humor.
Ooh.
That's bad. Sorry.
Ooh.
Dry. We're going with dry. Future note to Brantley, don't cut that part out of the episode. But yeah, I think it's fun. Any other thoughts from you on the Yuki Onna episodes?
I think it does establish a good kind of thing. Like it establishes, because in the first season we see Kotoko solving one mystery for so long.
Yeah.
And I think seeing her solve this mystery really quickly really established her as very competent at what she does, which I really like. And I also like that the show still is able to write like adult romance in a way that is believable and cute.
Mm-hmm.
And I like it. Like I will say some fun stuff about it. If you go to the characters on my anime list, Kotoko has the highest number of favorites in this show by quite a bit. She has 1,161 favorites, which is a pretty significant number.
Yeah.
Rika actually also has a high number of 345 favorites.
Wow.
Kuduro has 88 favorites. And Yuki Onna has 117.
Woo! Yeah, you know what? That makes sense. It 100% makes sense. Also, I don't have anywhere else to mention this, but they do just randomly slip in some rough 3D mimicry of Resident Evil into these episodes.
Oh, yeah,
Yuki Onna's playing Masayuki's PlayStation. And it's like, I'm assuming it's meant to be Resident Evil 2 Remake. It's definitely Leon, and it looks like they're inside of a building, but it's just very funny that like someone put in the effort to render that up, you know, for like a few seconds of footage, and that of the
it's funny.
So often it's like, oh, we'll do Dark Souls, oh, we'll do like some retro shoot 'em up, you know, like to keep it generic, but no, just Resident Evil 2 Remake. And it's like, it's not even just, oh, it's a person shooting a zombie. They bothered to like put up like the inventory, they'll like switch to the from like knife and gun and whatever. It's just like what the there's a bunch of effort here kind of randomly. This is very funny. I had to mention it. Okay.
It is very good. I also will say that Yuki Onna is voiced by Aoyuki.
Yeah.
So whenever she's on the cast, she's gonna kill it.
Mm-hmm. Our girl Hibiki from Symphogear, Madoka from Madoka.
Yeah.
Basically, all over the place, right? She's been there. Done that.
She's very prolific, right?
Yeah.
And so good for her. But then the next episode is a little bit stranger. We check in with Rika again.
Mm-hmm.
It's so like Rika in the last season tried to basically disrupt the Yaokai world by starting a rumor that was so powerful it created a serial killer ghost. I mean, she did, but she got stopped. But like, it's not like Kotoko and Kuro can do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
So she just like lives in this apartment with two people, and she's become friends with them. It's an okay episode. I don't really remember too much about it except for Rika talking up how scary and evil Kotoko is.
Yeah. And
then when the couple sees her, they're like, "This is her.
Mm-hmm.
She's so small."
Yeah. And I guess there is one funny bit out of this, which is they just show that Rika will go get winnings off of horse races by getting a ticket, walking out in the street, getting hit by a car, and then changing the future to just go get that. And like she does it in broad daylight.
Yeah, she's so blatant about not being able to be killed.
She just does not
like,
give a shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah, that part's so good.
She just walks it off. And she does it having just talked to people. Like it's like, oh, yeah, it's like the people who take care of the apartment, right? They're just there. It's broad daylight. And she just still is like, yeah, this is the time that I'm going to go, die so that I can fix history and win a horse race. It's just really funny. Yeah, so just I want to say with that, like, you do get a taste for the fact that Rika is also kind of a weirdo.
Yeah.
And that's something, right? Especially considering a lot of people in this cast have to be relatively normal so that the weird mysteries and events that are going on can stand out. But yeah, there's really not a lot that goes on here besides the fact that Rika is put back on the map. It's almost like a blip to just be like, hey, by the way, don't forget this character. Okay, bye.
Which is funny because they don't utilize her at all for the rest of the season.
Yeah, she comes back one more time in a flashback, basically, and she just does the same thing again, which was warn people that Kotoko is scary, and then that's it.
Yeah, it is really uncomfortable that her whole shtick is that she wants to marry her cousin.
Yes, that is
but
stipulation there.
But once again, it's also funny because it is weird, and when she tells her friends that that's what her goal is, her friends are like, "You're weird as hell." Like they're not comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's essentially an episode to bring Rika back. I like her for the most part as a character. I think her motives are kind of lame.
Yeah.
But she's still fun.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like she'd be a better character to retire, or would you want to see her come back again as like the revived sort of antagonist?
I would like her to be. I mean, I think she does come back as a revised antagonist in the later manga. I did not read all the manga. I read quite a bit of it.
Gotcha.
But I know I've seen pictures of her and Kotoko walking around.
All right, we got that to look forward to. Next up,
this episode's about a puppet.
Electroshock Pinocchio.
It's pronounced Pinocchio.
You want to do that again?
What?
Do you want to give it another shot?
Pinocchio.
What are you going for here? Like,
that's how you pronounce it.
Are you fucking with me, or are you being real?
I'm fucking with you.
I can't wait to go back in the audio and compare the two times you said it and see if they sound anything alike.
They were the same thing. I promise you.
Well, then, congrats to you. Tell me about. Tell me about
Pinocchio. Pinocchio.
Tell me about Gnocchi.
I love this episode. I think this, they just straight up have this old woman, and she's just so active that ghosts will talk to her. And I don't mean active like paranormally active. I mean she just runs like 10 miles a day.
Yeah. She's like 80 too. You know,
yeah, she's not even like, you know, because some people say like 60's old, but I know plenty of active 60-year-olds. She's like 80, and she has a talking cat, and they just kind of hang out about around, and then the cat is a yokai and explains to Tay, who is the active octogenarian, which is how Wikipedia describes her, that all the fish are missing because a ghost puppet is electrocuting them underwater, and that is the wildest mystery ever. So essentially what it is that this town is a fishing town, and they're totally reliant on their fishing for their economy, but they can't get any fish because they all keep dying. But they don't have any disease. They can't find out why. And it's like they died because they died. It looks like, you know, they might have been shock or something. And it was shock. Electroshock.
Yeah.
And so Tay is trying to figure it out. I do love in the first episode, the mayor is trying to get her to help out. And the mayor, who is like this heavy set dude, is like running beside her. And that is where they decide to do the dialogue between the two.
Yeah.
And it's like 5 minutes.
He's a champ. He keeps up, you know.
He keeps up with her without panting, without like dying. They don't make a joke about it. He's just running next to her, full on suit and tie, explaining what happened in this town. And I just think it's funny because it's very awkward because no one would have that kind of conversation while running. But it's just so in this show's personality to have 5 minutes of straight dialogue where the only animation is a running animation.
Yeah. It's like, you know, I guarantee this is not what happened, but it feels as if there had been a complaint from season 1 of like, oh, I'm sick of just, you know, hearing Kotoko talk in like the blue dimension while she describes how the mystery's going. You know, I want there to be more that's going on instead of just standing and talking. Okay, well then here's characters running and talking instead. So now you get some different backgrounds. It's great. Yeah, I think that Tai as a character, like, really helps these episodes out. They weren't my favorite, but like at the same time, like it was far from like bad or unwatchable. It's just different.
Yeah, I will say the motive behind why this stuff happened was probably the most interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wild that like do you want to explain it?
Yeah, so essentially what happens is that there's this doll maker whose kid got hit by a car by a bunch of college kids, and the town basically let them off with a slap on the wrist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he was trying to he made a
like a cursed doll, basically.
A cursed doll, and it had a meteorite in it? Is that what it was?
Yeah, so the like two separate sort of things here is that a meteorite fell to Earth, broke through the branch of a tree, and embedded in it. And so he sort of took that as an omen or a sign. He took that, then made it the arm of a wooden puppet that he carved the names of the offenders into, along with Tae's name, because she had been suffering from misfortune after misfortune and still living happily after that. And so carves their names into it, and essentially intends to make it cause trouble so that the people of the town will take all of their rage out on this puppet, and then all of that rage inflicted on it will cast onto the people whose names are carved into it, and then essentially deal them the psychic damage he thinks they deserve. Wild.
Yeah.
So
And
basically,
instead
the prolonged version of get the community to turn on these people like they did not before.
Yes. And essentially the wooden puppet doesn't give a shit. It just wants to electrocute whoever.
Yeah, it's kind of like an automaton. A bit. Like
Yeah.
it just kind of it walks and moves and attacks very simply. But it's also dangerous for that same reason. It can't be reasoned with, unlike basically every other mystery that is featured in this season. So,
yeah, it's a fine episode. Trying to think if there's any. Kotoko eats breakfast with her leg off, and that was fun.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just nice to see that become like part of the hey, this is what she does when she's comfortable.
Yeah.
And it was really funny because we went back and we're like, did they not animate her leg?
Mm-hmm.
Like just totally forgetting that that's part of her character.
Yeah. It's worth mentioning too that in the first episode of the season, she also does such a sick jump that her leg comes off in the process. That or she detaches from her leg to make said sick jump. I don't remember which, but just fun details for Kotoko as a disabled rep. I think that these are interesting episodes. I think it's a little bit like protracted in sort of the mystery is just very obtuse, but it's still at least it's obtuse then, so the absurdity of it is entertaining. And I definitely don't dislike these episodes. It's just a pair of them, so again, we really don't have a consistent measure of like how long these episode arcs are. It varies all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
So, shall we move on to the fifth mystery?
This is like the big one, really.
Yep.
Like this one took forever.
Yeah, and so the ruler disappeared. Give us the rundown.
So this one is this guy hired a yokai to kill his wife, and it was successful, at least as far as we know. But he feels guilty about it, so he wants to come clean that he killed his wife, but he wants it to be believable that a ghost didn't do it, right? Because he doesn't want his kids and his granddaughter to think that they can just hire ghosts to solve their problems.
Yeah, and it's in Kotoko's best interest to prevent that as well.
Yes. And so he tells Kotoko, he's like, hey, I'm going to die here in like a year, maybe 2. And I want you to help me help my kids figure out how I murdered my wife. And whoever has the most believable story, I want you to tell them that they were right, and then they get all of my fortunes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's basically a bottle episode where they all just hang out in the same room and go over the different things that could have happened. And it turns out that every single person in that family wanted to kill the grandma, the wife.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the brothers talks about how he and his other brother planned on killing her, and how they created an alibi by having the other brother's wife break her leg with a hammer, so that when she got murdered, they would be able to say, "Oh no, I was doing this," or "Oh, I couldn't have done that. I got murdered, or not murdered, but my leg was broken." And so essentially it is coming out that this family has basically been trying to betray each other from the very beginning. And Kotoko doesn't want this guy to get off easy. Her and Kuro have a really good conversation about how this guy basically got away with murder and he never got punished for it. And even if he went to prison, it still wouldn't be a punishment because he's already accepted that he's going to die. Mm-hmm. They also do this while they're trying to win a pin that when you turn it upside down shows a naked woman. And Kotoko really wants that pin.
She's just fascinated by sex and sexuality, I think. Again,
she's just like, I need to see that pin, and I need it now. And it's very funny that this entire conversation is happening, and while it's happening, you watch this Crane game like try and pick up a pen, and it drops it, and that it just happens until at the very end she finally gets it, and she's just really happy.
Yeah, it's like, here's our metaphor for like the characters grasping at, you know, what the situation is. Here's a Crane game to represent.
Yeah. So yeah, that happens. And so Kotoko decides that instead of this guy getting punished by going to jail, he's gonna get punished because he's gonna tear the family apart. And so as everyone starts to reveal how they planned on killing the wife, the granddaughter is like, "You're all monsters." And like, but we didn't do it. We didn't get to kill them. You know, that never happened. Because of our pact we made. And they're like, "You're right. So what did happen?" And they're like, "Well, what happened was she was mugged, and it went wrong. It was they think that the grandpa like hired an assassin or something, which I guess is not particularly wrong. I can't remember what their reasoning is actually."
Mm-hmm. But do
you remember?
Shoot, off the top of my head, no. I've managed to forget. But they do, like, they essentially resolve each other's alibis, right? And to say, yeah, well, this could not have happened this way. And they're about to settle it on. I'm pretty sure they're going to settle it on, you know, Goichi, the grandfather, having, you know, something to do with it, because he's like pleased with the result, right? It's not like he was egging Kotoko to like, no, you have to steer them back to it being me somehow, you know, or something like that. Yeah, then things turn around when Kotoko's like, well, I went and talked to Fubuki, and that didn't happen. So yeah, the first segment of all this is sort of inventing the mystery, right? Like it's a process of half-truthing it, which I think maybe feels most like the first season and its mystery. You know, where Kotoko isn't exactly telling the truth about things and isn't exactly lying and is sort of, you know, working on both of those boundaries. But then turns out, oh, there actually is a mystery to solve here. And then, you know, it carries forward from there. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So, you find out that like the ghost that was hired to kill this woman didn't actually do it. And Kotoko figures that out because she like interrogates the ghost.
Yep.
And so, like, they're trying to do all this nonsense, and then Kotoko's like, "Hey, guess what? You all lied, and I know all of you are lying right now. And I was just fucking with you." and so. She explains that like who actually killed Sumi, the wife, was the one of the brothers' wife. Yes, very confusing because I forgot their names.
Koya's wife.
Yeah, Koya's wife.
Or was it the daughter and Koya is his husband marrying into the family?
Yes. So, essentially what happened is she actually didn't break her leg, and was able to take out the stabbing, and so she stabbed Sumi, and then yelled "Stop him," so that everyone would think it was a boy, and then got the fuck out of there. And then Kotoko basically proves it, and then they try and shoot Kotoko, and Kuro steps in front of it, takes the bullet to the head, and is like, I'm sorry, shit like that just happens. And then they leave, just absolutely destroying the family, like, from the inside out.
Yeah.
It's a pretty intense couple episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, for this being a bottled up episode, but they're not going around, right, we're almost entirely working through flashbacks and, like, postulations, they make it work. And it stays interesting. It's also worth mentioning, too, that because you're walking into this knowing, at least, as a viewer, you're trusting that there is not a mystery here, that Goichi's being honest when he says that, he hired Fubuki to go and kill his wife. Like, all of that considered, it's a weird case where you're like, I guess, like, for once in the show I get to just sit back and not solve anything. Because there is nothing to solve. It was just given to us. But then, of course, it returns to form before this arc is done, because the mystery does return. We also, I guess, in this sense, we get some character development, and that Kuro does to get to take a bullet for Kotoko. So, lightweight, character demonstration there. It's just something to remind you, hey, this is their dynamic. So that's nice to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other thoughts on this arc?
I really liked this part because it was one of the few times where Kuro and Kotoko were together a lot.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, like, will joke that, like, they're terrible, like, well, not joke, but people think they're, like, their interactions are, like, insincere and they actually don't like each other because Kuro is very sarcastic and very, like, blunt with Kotoko. I don't see it that way.
Yeah.
And I think these couple of episodes are very good at showing how Kotoko and Kuro work together really well. There is this very well communicated respect that they have for each other. And I don't know if it's this episode or the end of the Electroshock Pinocchio episode where Kuro and Kotoko talk about how they're both essentially gods. Mm-hmm. And how scary it is for them to have to go through that together.
Yeah.
And I like their bluntness with each other. Mm-hmm. And I think that people misinterpret that as Kuro being annoyed with Kotoko, when in reality I think they both try to, like, frustrate each other. Mm-hmm. I think it's just, like, part of the way they flirt.
Yeah. There's some reading between the lines to be done there, I really honestly believe. Because you can look back to first season, right, where a big chunk of the first season is, hey, here's Kuro's ex, and here's Kotoko, and the way it turns out is that, Kuro and Kotoko continue to date, right? Like, if it wasn't working, they wouldn't do it, It would be far more dramatic to spin that, but they don't. They continue to cultivate their relationship. I really honestly just believe that they're weirdos, and they just, they have a dynamic that isn't sort of common anime trope style, or heck, even just sort of like standard rapport style of having a relationship, right?
But yeah, and I think because they bounce off each other so quickly, I think that's why the relationship works, right? That's why I don't think it is, serious. Mm-hmm. I think that Kotoko likes to talk about sex in front of Kuro because it makes Kuro upset, and I think Kuro, or not mm-hmm. like actually upset, but I think it causes him to get frustrated. But then Kuro will, like, bounce back by making it seem like he's not actually interested in her and she's just being a weirdo. Mm-hmm. Like, they're both trying to undermine each other's presence in these situations, but in a way that I feel is like they like to do it. It's a game for them.
Yeah, exactly. Who can be the bigger social outcast?
Yeah.
Please excuse my partner here, who is not playing along, right? And they're deliberately not playing each other's games. I think say in the episodes with the Yuki Onna when they're meeting in the cave, Kuro's hiding behind the rock that Kotoko's sitting on, right? Kotoko makes up she knows that the Yuki Onna would be terrified of Kuro if she saw him, but he's there, right? So he's just kind of sitting back there, unseen. And then Kotoko just kind of flagrantly lies that Kuro's not there because he's working his jobs, and then just pulling overtime, and basically complains about geez, why would he want to go do menial labor when he could be hanging out with me? But she actually gets mad just thinking of it,
Right. But it's also funny because she knows he's there.
Yeah, exactly.
So she's specifically making him feel like a bastard,
Uh-huh.
right? Man, I can't believe my boyfriend, who I love so much, wouldn't want to come and hang out with me.
Uh-huh.
Making him seem like the bad guy in a situation where he can't defend himself.
Exactly.
But he is hearing it.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Yeah, I don't see it as toxic, right?
Right.
It feels like they have boundaries that they're, pushing on, but they're not crossing. And I really do think they have fun with it, right? Yeah. Anyways, that's us on that. Any other thoughts on this family murder mystery?
If this could have been the full season, I think it actually could have been pretty cool with a little bit more field research and talking to yokai. I think it could have been stretched out. The fact that they were able to do it all in 4 episodes and make it still pretty inviting to watch was good. I also liked that it does show that Kotoko has this kind of weird sense of justice that we don't really get to see too much, because there's always a clear-cut way to solve it, right? Oh, it's an electric puppet that's killing fish. Well, if we destroy it, it goes away. Oh, we want to make sure that these two people end up together, but we want to make sure that nothing bad happens. But with this one, it's there is justice to be had, and the mystery for Kotoko is not who done it, but it is, how do I create a situation in which we have justice?
Yeah.
Big fan.
Totally. And lastly, to end the season, we have another one-off. A lucky day at the Unagi restaurant.
I feel like this is sort of the episode that is the kind of accumulation of the talks about how Kotoko's scary.
Yeah.
Because she goes to an Unagi restaurant, and there are 2 guys talking to each other because one of the guys' wives was found dead. And they don't have any murder suspects. They don't have any leads. Essentially, it's a clear cut, this guy got away with murder. And the entire time, Kotoko's just listening to them. And the guy who murdered his wife just cannot, just will not stop talking about her. He's like, what is she doing here? This is an old man's restaurant. How old is this girl? What is she doing? Does she know about my murder? And then while he has that internal dialogue, he is just dead calm with his buddy, who is actively accusing him of murder.
Yeah.
And they sort of do a reverse Kotoko, where the guy is goes right out the bat, hey, you murdered your wife. And then he kind of talks himself out of the fact that his buddy murdered his wife.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry for accusing you of murder.
Yeah, he starts to say, my theory has all these holes in it. It's, too presumptuous and blah, blah, blah. He walks himself back out of it. But meanwhile, he was right.
Yeah, and so at the end, the Kotoko and the guy are talking. And she's like, hey, I know you murdered your wife. Here, those holes that your buddy had, here is actually what happened. Here is how I know. and your wife is actually a ghost who's following you around.
Yeah, you feel so fucked up because she's just weighing on you physically right now.
Yeah.
So congrats, she'll never leave you like you wanted. Just too bad your life's going to suck hard for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that part's really interesting because it's, once again, another 7 minutes of dialogue, right? Where they're just standing outside. And while this guy is getting accused by Kotoko, he's like, I can kill her right now. I could do it. It wouldn't be hard. And then he's like, or maybe it would be, because why would she have all this confidence if that is the case? And so this entire time he's just like, why did she come to this Unagi place? Does she know that I'm a murderer? Was she here? Because eventually she convinces him to turn himself in, right?
Well, she's like, she says that, like, when she meets him afterwards, she's like, you're gonna go turn yourself in, aren't you, because you feel guilty.
Yes,
but
yes,
you know,
that's
she
right.
essentially doubles down on, like, explaining, yeah, here's why all of this is correct and why you're a POS for it, right?
Yeah. But then he's like, all right, before you go, I have one question. Why did you go to an unagi restaurant? And she's like, oh, because I hear it gives you sexual prowess.
Yeah.
And then the whole entire show ends.
Yep.
It's such a weird episode. It is everything that Inspector is. It is a whodunit, lots of dialogue, and then it ends on a fucking Kotoko is sexually horny joke. And that's it. That's Inspector Season 2.
Yep.
It was fun. I liked it. I still don't think I liked it as much as the first one. I loved how intense the first one is with its mystery, and how every episode built up the mystery of who what was the Steel Lady Nanase.
Yeah.
And I liked that it was this long build up. And I know the ending wasn't quite as intense as people hoped, but also I liked watching Kuro just get absolutely murked. Kuro does not get killed as much in this season as he did in the past. He gets electrocuted a couple times, which is pretty brutal.
He gets hurt bad at the sumo spirit fight in the first episode. But he gets shot, obviously. But yeah,
he gets electrocuted, but it's not quite as intense as season 1, where his face is getting disfigured almost constantly, right? Like, it's not quite as fun, but it's still worth people's times. And I know a lot of people who didn't like the first season as much like this one. So if you are wanting to check out a mystery anime, season 2 is good.
Yeah. I would agree with that. In a way, you might even be able to skip to the season. Like, I mean, you'll miss a little bit of context about Rika whenever she shows up, but she also just doesn't show up very often. So, like, you can probably gather enough context to put 2 and 2 together as to what part she plays in this. You know, I also do think that, like, season 1 is good. You should go watch that if you have any interest in this stuff. But in an interesting way, I think that you could watch these seasons separately and still get something out of it, without them being, like, contingent to enjoy. So, one quick side note on the final episode of the season, when they do show Takaya murdering his wife, it's something about how it's animated is just very funny. I know it's not nice to say, but, like,
Brantley loves watching people murder their wife.
No, I am not a lively kind of person. But it's just like, because he just kind of, like, he corners her, and then he just kind of takes her head and shoves it into the wall. But they don't really time the animation in a way where it's like a hard thrust. It's more like he just sort of, like, takes her head and pushes it up against the wall, and it goes splat, and she just instantly dies. Yes. There's, you know, I think maybe that would need a little bit more production time to work out. But the end result just looked funny. I'm sorry. But yeah, shall we talk about themes?
Yeah. themes are bastards exist, and sometimes you gotta lie to them.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that is partially what I was going to mention is subterfuge and the protection of spirits. I alluded this a little earlier in that usually this goes one of two ways, where Kotoko is either trying to, keep the world of spirits and yokai and whatnot, like hidden and protected, or we have an intersectional relationship of humans and spirits, and we're trying to make that work. And I think that is like, in our multicultural world, something that's relevant. Most of the spirits in Spectre are fairly weak and ineffectual, right? They, for the most part, are just citizens, pedestrians, right? Like they might look strange to us, but fundamentally they aren't like, it's not like oh, I'm a monster and I'm gonna do a bad thing constantly, right? Like it's not really like that. And so in the narrative, I think that they make up this, like, albeit fictional and sort of fantasized population, but still I think like marginalized in sort of a realistic way. They're invisible when they're going about their business as usual, which, like, literally in that sometimes you just can't see them, but also metaphorically in the sense that, like, they aren't seen for what effects they might have on society, right? That there's almost kind of like a either a cultural or perceptual blindness to, like, what yokai do in society. But then again, when troubles are being caused, and suspicions are heightened, then they become hyper visible, right? Oh, the apartment's getting haunted. Is it a spirit? Is it a curse? Like that kind of thing. And so that means that when you have this diverse population of spirits who are, a humongous range of, like, power and influence and personal goals and whatnot, they're at risk of discrimination or retaliation because they get lumped together, right? Yokai are yokai. Mm-hmm. Yokai are scary and they're evil and etc. Especially when, again, people are getting sensational because they feel like they're in danger or they don't understand the circumstances, and so that heightens that feeling. When you have situations like the Yuki Onna arc, I think that sort of resembles these oppressive legal complexities you get, say, with immigrants, right? Like, here's someone who is, existing within society, has a place here, is a real person, but on paper doesn't exist, and has to be careful how they, operate in society as to not be seen and thus questioned and thus maybe harmed. So I think, that again is interesting too. I like that in all of this, Kotoko is not a cop. She is, she mostly tests people, right? She's not, calling in, officers and being like, all right, it was Mr. Jenkins, bag him, boys. There's not that. Instead, she's a consultant. She advises situations, she brings things to light, but then it's up to either the community or the people involved themselves to take care of the rest, right? Even, like, Takaya, right? She's like, well, like, go ahead, go turn yourself in, that's what she expects he's going to do. But it's not like she walks him down to the officer's box and then says, all right, job well done. And she just goes about her business. He could have walked away and just not done that at all. I think that's, again, interesting, relevant for a world that's, I'd hope on the fringe of sort of accepting transformative justice as an option. So I want to open a question to you. What do you think about Kotoko's methods, where, you know, a lot of times she is trying to, like, hide and protect yokai, right? And that involves situations like the apartment situation where she's like, yeah, she's just gonna lie and say, no, there's no yokai here, even though there are yokai there. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's a good way to go about things, or do you feel like she should serve more of an ambassador role for the yokai?
I think that because of how Kotoko is as a person, I think it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you could do this kind of character easily.
Yeah.
Right? Where we're lying as a way to get the truth out is good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think because Kotoko wouldn't do it unless she was right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She's not trying to get someone to confess to something they didn't do, right?
Yeah.
Or she's not trying to get people to meticulously reveal and rat out their friends. Kotoko lies to using the evidence that is given to her. She lies so that she can create a story in which everyone who needs to be protected is protected. And if you did that in a cop show, it would feel bad.
Yeah.
Because and the thing is, because Kotoko doesn't normally have a power dynamic, right? Mm-hmm. She is a girl with very little power over the people, but she is able to help the people who are being victimized by these power structures by manipulating the people who are doing the victimizations.
Yeah.
It is a fun character that, if done poorly, would be very problematic.
Yeah, I agree.
That being said, I do wish there was a little bit more politicking between the yokai and the humans. We don't really see too much. It's kind of unfortunate that Kotoko is the end-all be-all for what is the rules of yokai versus humans. I kind of like having the different political ideologies that can be like talked about, but since nobody besides Kotoko really has any say of how the yokai are supposed to act around humans, that's a little I wish there was more.
Yeah, it's convenient for storytelling in that she gets to be a central character. Very, like, we get to fixate explicitly on her and Kuro, but also if she's the one entry point here, that really narrows down sort of how any of this operates. So, yeah, I agree. Yeah. For those who are also interested in more of this, like dynamic between humans and yokai, and like sort of how like tradition plays into this, and like, you know, that kind of politicking, I might recommend The Eccentric Family. It's a different kind of tone than the show for sure. It's a little more lighthearted, a little more whimsical, a little more weird. But anyways, just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, anything else you want to mention on themes?
Not that I have. Do you have any more?
You know what? I do like the community elements. You know, like Kotoko mentioned, yes. Hey, I went and talked to some spirits who just literally saw, Masayuki's, ex-colleague go and do the murder. So, like, I get to know what happened there. And like Tai, is like a big part of her community where she's talking with, the workers and the mayor and all that stuff, and they're all turning to her for her opinion on it. I think that's a fun demonstration of just like, these sort of like more closed in mystery situations being surrounding, a group of people that trust and interact with each other closely. It's just neat. I just like it. And it makes for good storytelling too. helps sort of delimit some things there. Would you like to finish off with some hypotheticals?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you have any? I don't.
I have two, yes.
Yes.
So, cross promotions are all the rage right now, right?
Yes.
To get Inspector more clout, what IP are you going to mix it with?
Phoenix Wright.
Yeah.
It would just be Phoenix and Kotoko just bullshitting each other, and it turns out that like neither of them were right. It's just one case, and like because they got spirit mediums and shit, right?
Yeah.
And so
Perfect.
so like you can't like Kotoko's like, well, how are they able to know about the yokai? And like, well, that's a spirit medium. And then Phoenix is like, hey, what's the spirit saying? And like, well, they won't talk to me because apparently this girl is their god. And so there's just like a bunch of buffoonery going on, and it does end with them working together to actually solve the murder. But like the first like part of it would be a one-on-one Phoenix Wright versus Kotoko case.
I love it. That's great. It's great too because normally Phoenix has like, you know, a female assistant. I guess really, and like same operates for Apollo and Edgeworth, whatever. Like they always have someone who's helping them. And at this point in the chronology of Phoenix Wright, like Maya has gone off and she's doing her own thing now. So in a way, like there's a spot open for Kotoko to step in as the new assistant character, and I think that would be interesting because she would want to take charge, right? And so it's like, okay, who is my main character? Is it Phoenix Wright or is it Kotoko?
And they're like you can't take to the stand. She's like, why not? It's like you're not a lawyer. You're not the defense attorney.
I don't know if you could
like...
see her over the bench. They get her a box. Yeah, it's great. I love it. It also, like, they've done it before where, like, when you're first taking on cases in the very first game with Phoenix, like, your partner is Mia Fey, and she does know more than Phoenix, right? She's the person who, like, you know, taught him everything he knows. So it wouldn't be out of, you know, it wouldn't be odd for you to have an assistant character who is actually a step ahead of you. They've done that before, so I love it. For me, I was thinking of Crime Site, which was that like online, like Sherlock Holmes Moriarty versus game thing.
Oh yeah,
but that died real fast, so that's not enough. Clearly, it would not get them any clout if that game itself couldn't even survive. So I do.
Wait, did it not? Is it gone?
I think it's offline now. Yeah, like it didn't last long. Which is sad because I like the concept, though. Also, I did not interact with it at all directly, so there's that. I do think it would be funny to put Kotoko into like something more child centric, like Yokai Watch or like Detective Conan or something. And they just like I would just like to see the ways that they have to like censor her, or like, you know, what would they do to make sure that, like, you know, Kotoko could still be there and fit in that, like, you know, child TV time slot. I think that could potentially be very funny. Okay, last hypothetical here. Let's say you're making a visual novel for Inspector. Okay, so like, I mean, like you mentioned Phoenix Wright, right? Could be in that same format or just text, whatever you prefer. Who would you make the point of view character? Would it be Kotoko, or would it be Kuro, or someone else?
That's a good question. I feel like it would have to be. Oh man, I feel like it would. You know what? It would be a third other thing. You would have a new character like that would be kind of following them along.
Yeah.
Right? Because you as the player can't really have. Well, at the same time, part of it would be cool to like examine things as Kotoko and then piece together the information for your kind of like a Danganronpa situation. Oh god, Kotoko would win Danganronpa so easily.
No contest.
No contest at all. She would like I don't even know. She could murder someone and get away with it. She would find every murderer, and it wouldn't even be easy. And you can't kill her. Like, she's too good. She's too strong.
Yeah. Oh my god, great.
Sorry, I just thought about that, and I was just like imagining like she would lie so hard that Monokuma would be like, is she right?
Yeah. That reminds me, we do have to still do an episode of Danganronpa V3. Oh,
that's this summer, baby.
Yeah, I have to commit. We're gonna do it.
It's gonna be great. It's been so long since I played the fucking game.
Yeah. I think it would be so difficult to pick between Kotokura and Kuro because, like, on one hand, Kuro is the obvious choice as, like, the straight man. And that still allows you to, like, solve things along the way.
You know what? You know what? It would be so much better as, like, a Disco Elysium-esque choose your own adventure. where like you play as Kotoko, but Kuro is constantly following you, and like you know, like in Disco Elysium when you start bullshitting your way through something, and Kim will sometimes help you out or like push against it.
Yes,
it would be that.
I love that because I was thinking like I wouldn't want to sacrifice having Kotoko's internal monologues because like. She already says wonderful things. I wonder what's going on in that head of hers, and then the things that she chooses not to say, right? So if you just have all of those, but you get to pick one, it's this fucking best of both worlds. It's great.
Oh, it's gonna be great. Hey, just so you know, something just fucky-wucky happened with my mic at about 124.
Okay.
So,
no worries.
Just letting you know.
Yeah.
Which actually comes to my homework.
Oh.
For everyone here. While you're listening to this episode, we fucked up a lot, and there's a lot of cuts. See if you could use your mystery deduction skills to find out where those cuts are.
Oh my god. There's a couple shows that we're following along with right now. That it's gonna take some time for them to finish, but we want to review. Those would be, obviously, Mobile Suit Gundam,
G-Witch.
The Witch from Mercury Season 2, or Core 2. Also Maho Shoujo Magical Destroyers, which
it is going to be a great it's going to be a great episode because either the show is going to stick to the landing and be an incredible satire, or it's going to suck ass all the way through, and then we get to talk about how much it sucks ass.
Yeah. So look forward to that. There's some other shows that we've sort of started and haven't finished. Magia Revo. And we have some on the early back burner, from Milky Holmes to Yurikuma Arashi to, Jesus, Danganronpa V3 for God's sakes. So, who the hell knows what we're gonna do next?
Yeah, it's a mystery. Solve it.
Solve it.
Thank you for joining us for this. If you want to hear more of us talk about nonsense, you can join us on our Twitch, where we play video games and talk over them. You know, like what people do in this day and age. Right now we're talking over Coffee Talk 2. We do a lot of fun voices and have a lot of inside jokes. We have for our small community, we have a pretty active chat. And so it's always welcome for more people to come in and talk. We'll enjoy you. Yeah. You can follow me on Twitter, where I don't really tweet that much anymore. It's a hellscape. The world is a fuck. Follow us on YouTube. I believe we just got our 50th subscriber because, YouTube is a game and we're not very good at it.
Yeah, the games we are good at we'll play on the Twitch instead.
So make sure you subscribe to us. Or don't, because we are not your dads.